being 7:30 on Tuesday, April 24th, 2018, I am going to call the Maine Township regular meeting to order. If everybody could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Clerk Pierce.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Clerk Giovanni, could you call the roll?
Assessor Moylan Pride.
Here.
Highway Commissioner Kazmierczak. Here. Clerk Giovanni is here. Supervisor Moraz.
Here.
Trustee Jones.
Here.
Trustee Carabota.
Here.
Trustee McKenzie.
Here.
Trustee Sweet.
Here.
All right. I am, first order of business is to request a approval of, a motion to approve the minutes of the March 27th. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I start this, we did have a typo in our agenda where item number 3 had stated the April 10th annual town meeting. Should have read April 3rd Supervisor's Annual Financial Statement Meeting. So we did send that to the press and give it to board members at their table. But we'll reach that when we get to it, but I want to note that. The first order of business is to request a motion to approve the minutes of the March 27th bill pay review.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, could you call the roll, please?
Supervisor Moraz.
Yes.
Trustee Jones.
Yes.
Trustee Carabota.
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie.
Yes.
Trustee Sweet.
Yes.
Second order of business, I would request a motion for approval of the minutes of the March 27th regular board meeting.
Make a motion for approval of the minutes of the March 27th, 2018 regular board meeting.
A second?
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion, changes, corrections, additions, or deletions? Hearing none, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Moraz.
Yes.
Trustee Jones.
Yes.
Trustee Carabota.
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie.
Yes.
Trustee Sweet.
Yes.
Third order of business, I'd request a motion to approve the minutes of the April 3rd Supervisor's Annual Financial Statement.
Before a second, I would like to mention that we refer that because I know the change was made today and I understand it was a typo, but it didn't get out under Open Meetings Act in 48 hours, so if we can go on this later, next month's board meeting.
Okay, so you have a motion to table.
A motion to table.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Having a motion and a second on the motion to table the approval of the minutes of the April 3rd Supervisor's Annual Financial Statement meeting. Is there any discussion other than hearing none? Can we call the roll?
Supervisor Moraz.
Yes.
Trustee Jones.
Yes.
Trustee Carabota.
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie.
Yes.
Trustee Sweet.
Yes.
Okay. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the April 17th special board meeting. Can I have a motion to that?
Motion to approve. Special. Sorry. No. Motion to approve the special board meeting minutes of April 17, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to make an amendment, please.
Certainly.
After about 3/4 of the way down where it says Highway Commissioner, stated on the first page, stated that he had used Jeff Brown's legal services many times and he did a good job. It then states that Supervisor Moraz made a motion to appoint Vincent Lake with Jeff Brown, Carrie Lynn, as Maine Township attorneys at the stated rate that is listed, and then that was seconded by Trustee Jones. Before that, I would like to insert that supervisor and substitute that after that statement about Highway Commissioner Kazmierczak, that we put in Supervisor Moraz then requested a motion for the hire of Ansel Kling's attorneys, asking for a motion to hire. There was no motion. Prior to any motion or second, trustee Sweeney requested a motion. See the video at the 6-minute mark. And then I would like to include my motion which was made, which said, trustee Sweeney, motion to defer this decision so that I and my fellow board members can fully consider the merits of the supervisor's recommendations as well as other options available to the board regarding the hire of general counsel so that we can ensure that we are providing the best legal representation at the best value for our taxpayers. That motion was seconded by trustee Carabota. Supervisor Morass called the motion out of order because she said, quote, there was a current motion pending, which she was about to make. There still was no motion made. Supervisor Morass summarized that she did do an RFP and that Ansel Kling was the only firm that replied. Trustee Sweeney said that she was not part of this process. Much later in the board meeting, Supervisor Morass said that she misspoke regarding doing an RFP. Trustee Sweeney again asked for consideration at the 10-minute video mark under Robert's Rules of Order to call the vote that was motioned and seconded as it was before any attorney hire motion or second. Supervisor Morass again refused to call the vote. And then afterwards, continue with Supervisor Morass' motion and second that is under, that's stated as it exists in the minutes. And then after that, delete the paragraph that says trustee Sweeney asked for a motion to defer this decision because that is duplicative and I had already addressed that before. I would like to call a vote to amend the meeting minutes.
Okay, so
I'm fine with, I just don't know which part are the amendments. All the editorial part?
This would be the, what I like to include in the minutes. Yes. And there's one, you'll see if there's clarification that you need assistance on, just let me know.
Doing that for everything. Okay, so having a motion and a second to make these amendments, is there any discussion?
I don't see why the video, citing the video wouldn't be sufficient.
Just Jones, can you put your microphone closer, please?
Sure.
So we can hear you.
I don't see why citing the part at the video, the place at the video would not be sufficient. We generally don't add things that are not action items specifically.
And I would just point out that I do agree with Trustee Jones. I don't have any problem. I understand you did do all that. I think it's reflected in here. And perhaps the better procedure would have been for me to consider your table motion. So I was trying to open it to discussion, and I then did consider your table motion, and we did table. So and I believe the minutes reflect that this was a special meeting called for the purpose, unanimously voted on, for the purpose of the supervisor appointment of Ansel Kling. But with respect to Trustee Jones's comment, I think that there had been agreement amongst the board that the minutes would be short and reflective of action items taken. So that's basically my comment. I recognize Trustee Stone.
Thank you. The point in correcting the amended minutes is that it's not correct as stated because it only shows your motion in here, not mine.
Oh, I agree we should put your motion.
So I would appreciate being called for a vote.
Can we put your motion in there?
I would like this called for a vote to approve as
That's for
amended.
a motion.
A motion to approve as amended, what I just submitted and had read, and seconded by Trustee Carabota.
All right, we can absolutely call that vote. Clerk Delano.
Supervisor Marask?
No, I don't think it's reflective, other than I would vote to put that trustee Sweeney did make a motion to table,
It says it.
which it does say.
It
Right. So my vote is no.
Trustee Jones?
No.
Trustee McKenzie?
is.
I apologize, Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
I don't want to belabor this. I mean, I think that it's accurate. If I didn't review the tape with this in hand because I didn't have time to do that, but I'm trusting that Trustee Sweeney did because she's so specific here. And if a fellow trustee is asking that the minutes reflect this, I'm going to say yes. I don't see the harm in it. So my vote is yes.
Trustee Sweeney?
Yes.
Moving along, before we get to public participation, I want to state that at the annual town meeting, and for those of you who came, I very much appreciate it. It was a wonderful event. I did, however, leave out a department. So at this time, I'm going to use part of my board report from later to ask the Maine State Department, and after I read what the report would have been for the Maine State Department, which is short, to stand and be recognized. Maine State, which is our youth and family services, continue to see an increased demand for services during the fiscal year. Counseling inquiry calls increased by 29% compared to 2016. New counseling client intakes increased by 11% compared to 2016. Our psychiatry program, offered in partnership with the Jocelyn Center, has allowed Maine Township to fill the void left by the closing of Maine Center in the most cost-effective manner possible by leveraging the time and talents of our employees, and most importantly, with respect to Jocelyn, they give us a psychiatrist that they pay for. So this combination program has been wildly successful, and they are going to add a second day to accommodate the demand. Our mentoring program, offered in partnership with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, continues to thrive with a high level of support, dedication, and expertise, no cost for the township. Our community education and professional development events reached 840 attendees with 10 events, which is a 28% increase over the prior fiscal year. Maine State provided 10,815 contact hours to residents for over all Maine State programs. 1,370 hours of community service were handled by Maine State, which is a 65% increase over the prior fiscal year. The Maine State runs 5 ongoing clinical groups, 6 ongoing programs for at-risk youth. Our agency day continued to be popular with 100 attendees, and I am proud to say that Rich Lyon, who is also double duty as our videotape person, won the statewide award for the best youth program in the state, and Kelsey Coyne, the statewide award for the best volunteer. If the Maine State staff could please rise and be recognized. Thank you, and I do apologize for that oversight. Next order of business is public participation. And I want to remind everybody that we do have public participation as well on every agenda item. And so is there any public participation at this time? Can you stand and tell us your name, Donna?
Hi, my name is Donna Adam, and I'm from Des Moines. And I would like to talk tonight about, again, I've come to many of the meetings that I think that we've been having, and having several discussions about all of the savings that the township has had. And I want to thank the board again for, and all of the staff for the work that has been done, because I have heard at almost every meeting that we've attended that things have been negotiated and looked at. And also, I've been coming to the meetings, and I also listened to the discussions that they had about the levy, and that they lowered the levy by 5% in most cases, except for the highway budget. And all of these things, they have to translate into lowering the budget when we get to it. And the budget has come in many pieces. And so I was very thankful last meeting that we got a report of the supervisor's report that showed each of the funds. And what I did is I put a list of each of the actual expenditures by each of the funds for the year ending 2/28/18, I'm sorry. And for the general fund, the total expenses were $3,297,620. For general assistance, $854,805. The highway commissioner's expenses, $1,969,268. So the entire expenditures for all of the funds together were $6,721,693. And what I would like the board to, I know there's more discussions coming tonight about additional expenses because these things come in pieces, but I would like the board to really get to the bottom line. And if we have a 5%, a lot of times we've been talking about a 10% savings for the taxpayers in many cases, but if we gave an overall 5% decrease savings to the taxpayers, the entire budget would come in at $6,385,608, and that's a savings of about $336,000. So I would just like to give that to the board and say thank you for for all the discussions about saving the taxpayers money these last few meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you for doing this. And I will make that part of the record in the minutes. I'm sorry.
Someone else.
Can you step up?
Thank you. I'm Joe Egan from Park Ridge. I was at the budget meeting 3 weeks ago, and as I mentioned then, I'm here speaking as a citizen of Park Ridge. Even though I serve on the Park Ridge Library Board, have for 4 years. I also serve on the Park Ridge Firefighters Pension Board, and I've done that for about 8 years. But let me preface my comments with some thoughts that some of the observations I'm about to give and comments and suggestions I'm going to give, I think some will agree with me, others may not agree with me. Some may believe these are comments that are needed. But regardless of your reaction or your position, I'd appreciate it if I could just get through my short little comments here without interruption. As I said, I came 3 weeks ago to the defined as or described as the draft budget. Materials were handed out. I listened to the presentation by the staff of that draft budget, the ensuing discussion by the board. I also went back and reviewed the tape from that meeting to make sure I got all my facts correct. In addition, I've also watched several other board meetings in the interim. I'd like to share a few facts that I learned by reviewing the material in the previous year results for the Maine Township, and also note that most of these facts I'm about to give were not presented at the budget meeting, so I just think it's important for the public to be aware of this as the board goes forward with their budget. And I would like to shed some light on some of these issues as it relates to the draft budget and the fund balances. So I will start with the fund balances. And the fund balances have been growing And the fund balance is basically the money that's left over at the end of the year from what is taxed versus what is spent. There are three fund balances: the general town fund, the general assistance fund, and the general road fund. And my comments on this point are the combination of all of those. I'm not going to break it into the separate subcategories, and all my numbers are rounded. But at the end of the fiscal year that ended February 28, 2017, a little over a year ago, the fund balance, the money that wasn't spent, was at $7.8 million. This year, on 2/28/18, those same three fund balances grew to $9 million. That was a growth of about $1.2 million in excess funds that is basically in the kitty right now. That's a 15% increase in the fund balance that's not spent. That fund balance is enough to fund Maine Township for 1 year and 3 months at their current spending level. None of this was presented at the budget meeting. And the growth in this fund balance doesn't appear to be ending. Based on the preliminary budgets that were presented 3 weeks ago, what's in the budget versus what's levied versus what's been spent, that fund balance is going to again increase this year. So we're going to grow the fund balance to well over 1 year, 3 months worth of expenditures, which in my opinion is excessive, and I don't believe it's a proper taxation of the people in Maine Township. I believe it's overtaxation, and it's not good management. The next is the draft budget that was presented 3 weeks ago. For those of you that weren't here, that didn't watch the tape, there was a lot of discussion about the savings in this budget. We're saving money here, we're saving 10% here, where someone's retired, so-and-so retired, we're not replacing them, or replacing them at a lower cost, and on and on and on. We heard about all these savings that we had. However, the facts are, bottom line, there are no savings. They're projected to spend more money than they spent last year. What was done 3 weeks ago was they were comparing an inflated budget to another inflated budget. And they were trying to compare savings between two budgets. And you don't get cost savings by comparing budgets. You get cost savings by spending less money. So the comparison really should be, what are you spending last year? What are you going to spend this year? That's a true cost savings. Comparing two budgets, both of which were inflated, leads to no reasonable conclusion that you can draw from that. Now the fact is, last year, the year that just ended, the actual cost, what was spent, was $7.1 million. That's the money that went out the door. This year, the draft budget is at $7.7 million. And that $7.1 million that they actually spent last year, $400,000 of that was just transferring money from one budget to another budget. It really wasn't spending, it was just moving money around. Some may call that a shuffling, but call it what you will, it really wasn't a spending, it was just moving money between funds. But assuming that it is spending, they spent $7.1 million last year. This year's draft budget is at $7.7 million, or an increase of $600,000 over what they spent last year. So it's not a decrease, it's not a cost savings at the bottom line, it's actually an increase of 8%. So let me pause just for a moment here and to make an observation. Having been here, looked at a number of tapes, and listened to the ensuing discussion that's taking place, there are 3 new trustees on this board, and I believe they're asking all the right questions. They're inquiring about these budgets, they want detail, they have a fiduciary responsibility to us, the taxpayers, and I believe they're doing what they should be doing. Even though there are other members on this board that have called them obstructionists, belonging things, but I believe they are asking the right questions and they are seeking the right detail that we as taxpayers need to know and have. So my next comments and observations don't apply to them.
I'm sorry, you have
But
one
real
minute.
quickly,
You have 1 minute.
I just have a few more comments. I appreciate you giving me the courtesy to let me complete.
I absolutely will, but we do have a time limit.
I understand that. So the comments, these draft budgets, these savings, these costs, is not accurate. The real facts are there's an 8% increase over what was spent last year. This fact was not presented 3 weeks ago. This is not something you'll find anywhere in the material that you have. It wasn't presented. Second, describing the draft budget as alleged cost savings of X and Y dollars is not even creative accounting, but rather, in my opinion, it's misleading. Again, you can't have cost savings by comparing inflated budgets to inflated budgets. At best, this budget process presentation to the public is an example of poor management. Again, this is my opinion. And that's at best, it's poor management. I would describe it more as misleading, perhaps manipulative, and perhaps, and this excess fund is an abuse of taxpayers' dollars. Now I have 2 suggestions. As a taxpayer, I'd like to give this board to consider. I'm not here just to complain or provide observations, but I also have some suggestions that I hopefully, as a taxpayer, the trustees will consider going forward. First off, I would hope that the trustees would consider freezing the budget, this year's budget, at what was spent last year. And if there are these alleged cost savings, then those cost savings can be a source for things like the discussions we can hear later about potential increases in salaries. If we have cost savings from last year, let's use part of that as increases for savings and not increase the budget. And my last suggestion is, and this relates to the excess funds, some which were described as slush funds, an abuse of taxpayers' dollars, but next year, for the levy, I would suggest, because it's such an excessive amount, that this board consider cutting our levy for next year by $3 to $4 million. That leaves way more than sufficient funds that they would need. As at the library, we have 3 to 6 months of excess funds to carry us through the year, more than sufficient for us. And our budget is maybe half their size, but having a 3 to 6 year cushion is more than sufficient. They have a 1 year and 3 months, and it's growing. Again, that, in my opinion, that's an excessive use and an abuse of taxpayers' money. That's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, is there anything else? All right, moving along. I would make a motion for approval of the general assistance expenditure.
I make a motion to approve general assistance expenditures for pay dates of April 6, 2018 and April 20th. 2018, the general assistance checks number 51220 through check number 51272 in the amount of $66,357.67.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Marasco?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
I would ask for a motion for approval of the road district expenditures.
Motion to approve payroll for pay dates of April 6th, 2018 and April 20th, 2018, and road district checks number 20314 through check number 2058 in the amount of $102,056.11.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Marasco?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
I would make a motion, or seek a motion for approval of the general town fund expenditures.
Motion to approve payroll for pay dates April 6, 2018 and April 20, 2018 and general town fund checks number 55827 through check number 55899 in the amount of $264,252.72.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hi. Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Marasco?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
I Okay, tonight, item 9, I would like to introduce Catherine Savara, who is our health insurance broker. We had talked about at the last budget discussion that we had a 15% or so line item holder for insurance purposes, and so Catherine has some news to share. About the renewal rate. This year, Catherine was able to get a preliminary renewal rate much earlier at my request than usually happens in late May or June.
Good evening, thank you. I come with good news. We have our renewal, which was initially issued at 9.66, so our placeholder for 15% was reduced. Going back and forth with Blue Cross all day today, negotiations, brought us all the way down to 6.38%. So bringing our budget line item reduction to $92,861.83.
So the current cost is $1,077,283, and it's going to be $1,146,61.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And so the second and third page just show you the original spreadsheet of plans and rates per tier and per enrollment, and then the final spreadsheet shows what I was able to in the 11th hour, 59 second, get Blue Cross to send me information on our negotiated reductions.
That's incredible. So yesterday, when we met,
Yeah.
we're at 9.66, which I thought was incredible. So in a day, you got a 3% more reduction.
Yes.
3.3.
3.3.
Yeah.
And is this still ongoing, or is this a pretty final number that we can be comfortable using?
Yes. So this is final. So
Okay.
this is final
Good
for
job.
July 1st. We can do our planning, and we are actually very happy with this.
Excellent.
So the last number, the budget line item reduction created, that's the result of going from 15% down to 6.3.
Correct, from the placeholder, because we actually never know what the renewal is going to be, and I know the budget's always done way ahead of time, so they try to take into, it's not only the medical that's taken into consideration in that placeholder either, it's other things as well, so besides the medical, and so to try to give some idea, they usually put 15% in, that's just based over the last 20 years, what has it been, and then the difference is
Then you have,
that.
but then you had an actual renewal issue of 9.66, but then you brought it down to 6.38%.
Correct. So the difference is 8.51, so if you times that by the current, you'll get that line item reduction created of $92,861.
I really want to thank you. That's a lot of work.
Thank you, I appreciate
it.
this.
To really, and, represent the township and the taxpayers, so, very pleased.
Thank you.
Board, have any other questions? Great job.
Great job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and before we move into personnel, I do want to state that, as we discussed at the last meeting, our budget hearings, formal budget hearings will be held on May 22nd at 7 p.m. for General Town Fund and General Assistance budget hearing, and then at 7:15 p.m. for the Road and Bridge budget hearing. And the budget is on file as required and available, the preliminary budget, available, for all public to look at and adjust. And I just wanted to make that noted. It will also be published as part of when you get the agenda for the May board meeting. Now,
Can I
moving.
ask a question?
Sure. Trustee Swing.
Do you anticipate any change to the budget numbers that you?
Well, we just heard, we're gonna obviously reduce the salary line, the line item for the insurance by 92,500, whatever the number was. And then I think there's some current further reductions, depending on what we do with respect to personnel here, that we had a line item, in salaries that included like the old salary that code enforcement was at, and we lowered that by $20,000. And similarly, as was discussed previously, for head of maintenance, that was lowered substantially pursuant to the costs we previously discussed. So, and you're welcome to make any suggestions for, actual other line items. As I think I stated at the last meeting, Dana, myself, and all the department heads met for hours and hours to go over every single line item and use the actual number. So for example, if last year the budget for postage was $300, but we only spent $50, we used $50 as the next year's budget. So to try to move it towards, actual, instead of having it, inflated or have it more realistic. Because last year we honestly didn't know what this board. There's other reductions that were made previously with respect to work done on the building that enacted them. And then there's other line items depending on the RFP vote that may go up with respect to the security measures that Trustee Carabota is interested in putting into place. So,
Can I come in real quick?
yeah.
So we obviously have to have the budget passed by law on May 22nd and
Right.
before Tuesday. So for me, what would be ideal, since I have to change some line items, I would like to make the changes and have the budget to 2 weeks prior to passing, so you have some time to look at it.
Did you say passed by law on May 22nd?
Yes, that's the latest we.
And that's our
has to be
next
passed.
meeting is May 22nd?
Correct, it has to be passed, the latest, May 22nd.
Okay.
I recognize Trustee McKenzie.
I'm sorry, did I just interrupt you?
If I can finish. 'cause-
No, I thought you were.
Trustee McKenzie, you're getting me in trouble.
I didn't mean that.
I'd like to make a comment in regards to the budget now then, given that, because I don't see it as a specific item we don't have on the agenda as far as budget, but I think it's pertinent to understanding what we do on a go-forward basis with hiring, because that's obviously a big factor. So, in listening to the comments by Mr. Egan that were presented, I concur that, I have a concern, and that is that our actual last year expenditure was actually $400,000 less because we transferred that to the road fund. So in the town fund, our expenditure was $3,897,620. In the assistance, it was $854,805. And in the road fund, it was $1,969,268. For a total amount that we actually had spent, and this was confirmed on the supervisor's report and presented on April 3rd, the total amount of those funds were $6,721,697. Our tentative budget that's been presented is $7,747,138. So we have a budget that reflects an increase of $1 million, $1,025,000 over last year's expenditures. I am very concerned about that, and I think it's going to impact decisions we have to make tonight.
Well, you're really welcome to make any changes or amendments. Some of those increases are because costs of goods and services increase every year, and consumer price index went up by 2%.
This is a 15% increase, and I had expected.
That's fine, you can do, that's why it's on file, and we welcome any reductions. We did have to put in, you know, there's a contingency, and then there's things such as the RFP that will affect this, and there we're quite new. The problem, I'll just say this, and you guys are welcome to do what you would like to. I'm happy to do whatever. You know, as Donna pointed out, so we did actually reduce expenses. So the more you reduce expenses, the higher the reserve is going to be. So we have a little problem. I mean, we don't want to have that problem. The prior supervisor did not spend any money on necessary building maintenance, you know, needs. And some of that has to be spent or the building will be falling down around you and isn't really conducive to safety, as Trustee Carabotta has talked about. So given that, you know, the cost of goods and services, but it's up to you guys. I mean, I have, you know, we do the budget to allow for those projects, and it was suggested by me that we establish a capital fund, restricted capital fund that, and I think this, if you are in concurrence with Mr. Egan's comments the last time, who, you know, I think it's not quite a fair representation to say slush fund because everything is accounted for. You guys approve the bills, and there is no slush fund. But if you would like, you know, I would like a restricted fund that can only be spent on capital improvements. That would include the township and the building. And we've discussed that with our auditor. And, you know, we're in between attorneys. We had briefly discussed it with our prior attorney. And I would certainly like permission to discuss it further with the interim attorneys, but I think that would be of great service, and that would at least alleviate one of your concerns with respect to the reserves. Because honestly, if you keep reducing, and it's just going to keep growing, and we will go beyond the statutory limit. So I'd like to give the money back. I'm sorry, all right, and we have to share, so Trustee Sweeney, you can have another comment, and then
Okay, just for clarification, as far as what the facts are, our current reserve on hand, based on what we had for 13-18, excuse me, that was presented for 3-18, based on the new auditor's presentation, the total reserve of the balance on hand is $8,900,000. So it's almost $9 million.
Yes.
The year before that, the reserve on the audit report that was $228,17 was $7,778,000. So we've gone up $1.2 million in 1 year in our reserve.
But because we've saved, right?
So,
Because of the cuts.
Though I'm concerned about that, in commenting and listening to Ms. Adams' presentation, she looked at our actual expenditures of $6.7 million. Her request is that we have another 5% reduction from that. I'm suggesting at the minimum that we make a motion to receive a flat budget back from you that would detail, you know, what we could do to live within that means, because we've talked at length about savings and what we're going to provide to taxpayers. But this is an increase of 15%. It's an increase of over $1 million in a year. So I'm not prepared 1 month, actually less than 1 month from today,
Are
to
you talking about
approve.
flat from
I don't
actual or
understand
flat, like a
what
flat from our budget of 17, 18?
I'm talking about expenditures of last year
So flat
to this
or
year,
actual?
actual last year to this year.
But that's not taking into account any increases, health insurance.
Well, what we know we have is all the savings from the reduction in workforce, and that would give us some, you know, wiggle room to figure out what we can actually allocate for budget, salary increases or
So what,
hires.
I think what Supervisor Morass was stating, though, the more we keep decreasing that, the higher the reserves, but I know you're stating that that's a concern of yours. It's kind of like a catch-22, so the
Right,
more,
but
the
the
less you
reserves
spend,
are
the
a
higher the
concern.
reserves.
But the bigger concern that we can affect right now is this year's budget. And to
Right.
ask for $1 million more is not acceptable.
Okay.
But so what Dana Berman is requesting is, I presented a tentative budget, and you are more than welcome to do what changes you would like. So I'm gonna put that in your basket.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion then.
No,
I
I'm
never got
sorry.
to-
I'm
like,
gonna let
yeah.
I'm gonna let Assessor Manley try and speak, but that's not on the agenda. And actually, I mean, we can't do that, but, a motion to keep it flat, I can't do that. I can put it on the next agenda, but the next
we have
We
agenda.
have to, yeah,
We have to have it approved.
I know.
We haven't
So,
had any,
but we're gonna get to a discussion of that, but, I'm sorry,
I was.
oh, yeah, you were, she was.
I was.
Okay, trustee McKenzie,
So what I was going to ask is based on the fact that there's all these moving parts, and we do have to pass the budget by May 22nd, and we are able to propose changes, and we are receiving some revisions here and there. I think we need a special meeting.
I agree. I was going to propose it, but
right, I was,
I didn't get a
but
chance.
here's the issue. We're under the gun right now. And the
Okay,
last
trustee
meeting we
Sweeney,
had on-
please don't talk out of order. Let trustee McKenzie finish. And Assessor Marlene Craig is next. And let's keep it moving. I'm all in favor. That was coming soon. I didn't know if you guys wanted a meeting a week, but
It's important.
it is important, and I'm totally available. But now I'm gonna let Assessor Marlene Craig have her say, and then we'll come back to that issue of a special meeting. Assessor, I recognize Assessor Marlene Craig.
Thank you. I was just looking, in consideration of our current insurance, 15% was tacked on. That brought that insurance rate up to 1.2 million over that, 1.2 and some odd change, almost 50,000. So that 15% and that reduction, there's your $1 million right there, Susan. And if we don't pass a budget by our due date, we will not start receiving our tax money, our real estate tax money. They can stop paying to us if we don't have a budget passed. So just to put that in respect to, your decision and what you're talking about, okay? But if you look at that number, that's that $1 million you're talking about.
I mean, it's 100,000.
Yeah, it's 100,000.
It's
92,092.
92,091.
I wish we had that extra zero there.
That would have been nice.
So as a person who revises the budget, does the budget, I don't know, I know we're having a special board meeting on the 8th. I don't know if there's any.
No, you can't add it
You
to.
can't add anything? Okay.
The 8th
I just need
is-
time to do the revisions,
Right.
so it does take time to kind of,
What I
I'm
was
more than
thinking-
happy to, obviously, whatever you guys want to do is fine, but it does take time to kind of redo it. So and plus I want to get it to you with all the revisions, you have time to look at it and then let me know if it looks okay. So I just want to make sure I have a week or two in advance, to do the final copy. I just feel like time goes by very fast, so.
Right. And so what I was gonna propose, because, at the board's request, I am interviewing, approximately 6 law firms. Instead of what we had anticipated or hoped to happen, and have an attorney, who we really should have advising also on this matter. And I am really working day and night to do that, and you guys sent me, law firms, and I have meetings scheduled. Some of them I've already had meetings with. So what I anticipate on the 8th is a procedure similar to agency funding, where, each firm has 15 minutes, a 5-minute presentation, and the board has 10 minutes to ask them questions. And obviously, before then, I'll get you a summary of, all of them, and the one that I would be proposing.
Start time.
I'm sorry?
Which was the start time?
The start time was 7 o'clock. If you guys could make it 6:30, that might be helpful. So what I was proposing on that special board meeting was that to keep it in, I don't think that it behooves anybody to have 8 law firms sitting in the audience all, being part of this open free-for-all. I think it would be much more professional for you guys to have the opportunity to individually ask any questions that you have of these law firms. And any other firms that you guys, someone indicated to me there were more to come. So really, would like those if there are, and I'm making every effort to accommodate this process and be as, I think Mr. Martin said, as 31 flavors as possible. But I do also think that we do need a township attorney. So I don't think we should put anything else on May 8th. If we can move the starting time to 6:30, does that work? Does that work?
I can do it.
Okay.
Sorry, my phone's not ringing. If you want to keep going, I will.
So the next thing,
Can I have an exact date, please?
that would be May 8th.
6:30?
Correct.
That's a special meeting, right?
Right, and the purpose of would be presentation, discussion, board questions, and supervisor's appointment and vote. The next meeting I would propose is, at your request, and I have been thinking along those lines, is a special board meeting on May 15th, solely devoted to the budget, to address any of your changes, which I really hope you can work with Dana and get them to her so she can have those revised things for you. And I'm really trying to accommodate everything you want. And so for the May 15th, I would ask again if we can do 6:30, if not 7, and I'm open to any other date that week.
I would be.
I'm sorry?
Are you asking for availability?
Yes.
May 15th?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
I'm wondering.
All my law firms are good.
Oh, they're all.
I'm sorry, for the May 8th, I'm moving on to budget. You guys have me. Yeah. So Dave's good, Susan's good,
I was looking.
Yes.
I'm
Jenny's
looking at-
good.
I was looking for the 6th.
You're good. Susie?
Thank you.
Susie's good.
Through 16th.
So we're going to do 6:30 both May 8th and...
We can do 7 if you want.
So it's easier for me to do the 6:30 on the 8th than the 15th.
Sure. And I think that probably is better for the 8th, and we don't really need it for the 16th. I mean, the
16th?
15th, I'm sorry, I misspoke. So let's say 7 for the 15th.
I'm wondering to make a lot of trouble, I'm wondering if the 16th is possible. I'm starting a matter on the 11th.
I can never do Wednesdays, I'd like to be in the meeting, I'm sorry.
And I'll just have to make the 15th work.
Yeah, I would like to go with the majority here if that's
Yeah,
okay.
let's just make it work.
All right, going once, going twice.
7 o'clock?
7 o'clock on May 15th for a budget workshop, essentially. And 6:30 on May 8th for the attorney issue that I previously mentioned.
2 special meetings.
Right, both special meetings. And now I'm going to move on.
May I be recognized?
Yes, trustee Smith.
Regarding the budget workshop, the reason I was making a motion to keep the budget flat is because that's what I'd like to make a motion.
But you can present it.
Because, I could present it that evening.
No,
But the work is not done prior to that evening to actually show that we can in fact do that. That's what we, would like to vote on. So it's not going to be.
We're not voting on May
submitting.
15th.
Well, Dana
right?
had made a comment that you were looking for us to submit things back to you. And to have a flat budget is really, I don't want to micromanage, who does what. We'll see what we have left over from, to accommodate salary increases or whatever, But right now, I feel like it's premature to have any kind of discussion, to be honest with you, on the subsequent issues we have to vote on tonight without a budget.
Make that decision, yeah.
The reason we have to vote on the personnel issues is because you guys cannot expect the maintenance person to work 2 jobs. I mean, I'll get to that, but you're not letting me get to that. You want a budget meeting, so I'm trying to accommodate a budget meeting. If you would like to keep it flat, can you submit those figures?
Yeah.
What you want to Dana Berman, and we absolutely, that's the time on May 15th. Trustee Yarmo.
Thank you. If, the way I'm seeing it, and I know I'm reiterating, if the budget actual spending is kept at the same as last year, even with the 5% cut, if the spending is cut, actual spending is cut by 5% as compared to the spending last year, we're going to have the $92,000 left over in extra money. We don't want to call it a slush fund. We have the savings from the consolidation with Mike, who's worked with the consolidation with the other positions. So that would leave us then with certain monies remaining that we can look at, as we were told here by public comment, that we could use toward, like a certain fund that we could use toward whatever we need to do.
Well, that's what I've been
Salaries.
working on all along.
The thing is that to turn to me and say, Dave, give me the numbers. That's not or somebody to give the numbers, one of the trustees to give the numbers, no. What it is that you simply take the number of all 3 funds, as was done in public comment. This is the number we need to achieve. So then let's just do it. That's what we.
6 million.
Well, we can't,
Because if you're saying for Susan, we can all submit, but that's not really the purpose of a trustee. The purpose of a trustee is we give you the mark, and you make the mark work. And how do we make the mark work efficiently? Well, under your supervision and under the management of these departments, they all know much better than me.
well, but you're not listening to them. That's the point. So you gave us a 5% reduction in the levy. We did that. And
No, I'm not talking about the
Okay,
levy,
no,
because
no,
the levy has
but-
nothing to do with the budget, the
No.
budget has nothing to do with the
Trustee
levy.
Karen,
That's what I was taught.
what would you like, when I'm saying that I've already submitted the tentative budget. If you don't like it or you want to change it, that's what the whole purpose of the 30 days is. So if you want to keep it flat, it's fine. I'm not quite sure what that means because we literally went through every line item and not every line
Can
item.
I ask, are you saying that you want us to take the bottom, you're just saying you're gonna give us a bottom line number and you want us to rearrange it somehow so the bottom line number comes out the same this year?
Because how can
I
I do it,
can't say
how
that.
can I do it better than you?
Right,
How
that's
can
what you're saying, you're saying, take
Right.
what I'm saying is he's
Yes.
take the same bottom line number. He's not gonna dictate exactly, which line item, each line item has to stay the same, but the bottom line number stays the same. We can dictate where we push the numbers around which line items.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
But you're not expecting us to have 8 more interdepartmental meetings to go through each line item.
I'm really not concerned I mean,
Well,
I don't come in here and I don't operate each department. All I'm saying is that we were told, and I was taking the numbers as actual spending, that when we're looking at the spending from last year versus the spending of this year, that we've cut each department's spending by 10%. But then, when I look at it from the last meeting till now, we're not comparing it from actual spending to actual spending. Okay, so if you look at actual spending from last year, here's your number, okay? All 3 departments. And all 3 departments, if we take that actual number, that's the goal minus 5%. If, in worst case scenario, we keep the spending the same and forget about looking at one budget to another budget, we just look at actual numbers. So here's the goal. We had all 3, I believe it's 6.7 million, whatever the figure is. That's your bottom line. Rock and roll, and let's do it. And I think that's what I'm hearing. And I'm thinking that's what I'm looking for too.
And also I want to point out that it's like, including road and bridge, I have no control.
But it doesn't
over road and bridge.
matter. However it's done, because then we're supposed to have that money left over that we've saved with the consolidations and all that, that we announced at the annual meeting, we summarized the
Right,
annual
but those
meeting.
were also done so that you can, we can do some capital that's why I'm requesting, to me, that's a better answer, but well, absolutely, I mean, if Dana understands what you're asking and she can do that,
And I'm
Well,
I
I
mean,
can't do that alone. We would have to start with,
I
that's
would,
quite time consuming. We would have to kind of start all over.
Yeah, I can't start
And that's-
meetings
and
all
that's
over.
why you speaking forward was so helpful tonight, because it gives you much, oh my gosh, I know the work.
No, but we can't-
But that's, what I'm
legal
saying
is
is,
like
I don't
40
wanna,
hours
I don't wanna wait till the 15th and say, I'm not gonna.
So do you not want a meeting on the 15th?
So I want a meeting on the 15th, I'd like to see a budget, it takes all 3 numbers, adds them up together from last year, of
I
actual
can't.
spending, that's the goal, minus 5% is what I'd like to see.
Okay.
May I be recognized?
Not quite yet. In it, 1 second, I was just finishing talking. I had said for many months, and Donna recognized this at the last board meeting in the comments, I had promised you guys that I would seek each department to cut their budget. It's in the minutes, it's on the video. I never said that each department could cut actual spending because you didn't know actual spending. We weren't even close to the end of the fiscal year. So I understand what you're saying, and I'm perfectly willing to accommodate. We can't redo all the budget meetings that we had. So I understand your bottom line number, but you have to take some responsibility in where you want those cuts.
I
Well, then,
love that, like,
you're
but
either
that's
gonna
not,
vote-
that's
I
not
mean-
that's not my
Okay,
job.
well, we'll discuss it on May 15th, and we'll see how far.
I'm just saying that I don't want this to then we come up, by the way, by May 22, and it's not accomplished.
That's why we're having a May 15th.
Right, so and that's what I'm saying for the May 15th, to give a running start, that's what I'm looking for, is real numbers. And I know at the last meeting, to be fair, I did mention that, I said I'm looking for real numbers. I'm sorry.
Okay, but I guess everybody doesn't listen when Dana and I did use real numbers. And then we put some projects in that we've discussed, and also some contingency because of what you're about to request, which on its own takes up $150,000 if we did that RFP. Trustee Sweeney, and then can we move on with
So
the
the
agenda?
first meeting, we can, I think this is critically important, because the very first meeting
Oh,
we
wait, can
had
we,
on the budget was the 3rd of April. It's now 20 days later, 21 days after that. So this is our second meeting, and we're talking about the budget for the first time, besides being handed the budget and reviewing just single line items. After analysis of the budget, we can clearly see that what's being asked is an increase of 15%, which totals over $1 million, $1,025,000. And I think that's unacceptable, which is why I actually asked for a motion to present a flat, meaning same as last year's expenditure, to be brought forward. And if
So
I
I
can get
can't do that
seconded,
motion. I
and
can't
I
do
think you seconded that, Dave?
I
Dave seconded
can't
it, so
do
I would like to
it. It's
vote.
not
this
on the
motion.
agenda, it's not transparent, and it isn't appropriate. I will, however, I mean, I think what Assessor Riley Craig had been trying to say, and maybe I'm wrong, is 15%, you're saying there's a 15% increase. Now, in one line item, we just saw how much, 8% decrease. So things will go down.
That's
And
fine.
that's the point of this May 15th. If
Right,
there's
right, but
other
the preparation-
specific, can I,
But I wasn't finished, so I really didn't.
but I have to get through, we can't do a
But
motion.
what we have to be clear on is that prior to May 15th, that we actually have the preparation done to ensure that.
That's what Dana just
Which
requested
is
of
why I
me.
wanted to have a motion, and you're telling me I
Okay.
can't have a seconded motion and a vote on this.
Okay, I'm going to,
You're telling me I can't have a vote?
I'm going to ask the attorneys.
Can I have a vote?
Again,
I'm making a
I will
motion
say that
to
we
have-
have not been retained to do corporate work yet, but as a member of the public, I would never recommend on voting something that's not on the agenda. You can make clear what your intent is and what your want and what your likely vote will be if it's not met, but I wouldn't recommend
But I'm not
taking
hiring,
any vote.
I'm just motioning to.
But it's, if there's a vote taken, that's technically final action. It wouldn't really be, I mean, if it was a bid to the packet, it would say, you know, it doesn't have any effect, but, you know, in reality, we never recommend taking a vote unless it's on the agenda.
Okay, so, why don't we try to get through some of these things and then see how they impact these other things? Because otherwise, we're sort of spinning our wheels. So, we will make every effort. I think we're all saying the same thing. That Dana, you know, one of your suggestions, if there's other suggestions, now she understands. And we will make every effort to work with that number and see if, you know, we can recreate different line items. We will absolutely, Dave, make every effort to do it. Okay. So, next agenda item, discussion and vote on filling the open maintenance position for appointment of the maintenance director. We had an interim maintenance director, Mike Simon, and we put this out to post, and we had one other applicant. He was interviewed by Dana and her group, and Dana's recommendation that Mike Simon be hired as the actual director of maintenance. It's Mike, you know, we discussed this, Mike's, under Mike's leadership, he believes that he can operate this department without filling the vacant position that was created by Bobby Gannis left, and really reduce expenditures further while having a better working relationship with everybody. He also agreed, as I pointed out at the last meeting, to take on 3 new duties that are typically those of the code enforcement with respect to managing and supervising the hall monitors, which is a very important aspect, and also take care of all liaison with the board. Just yesterday, he, pursuant to, you know, my new policy of getting any private mail that comes FedEx or registered to the trustees ASAP, I had Mike deliver to trustee Sweeney some mail. He's also agreed to keep on the garbage duty of, to finish the problem that we had, which I think, and so I guess my point with respect to holding off on this is that I don't think he can do 2 jobs at once. So if you want to keep him interim for some reason, we will be without a code enforcement officer. And because I honestly can't ask an employee, I think that violates, and this one we can ask the personnel advisor, but it's just not fair. He's not getting paid to do 2 jobs, and he will accept these other 3 jobs. So, having made that statement, I'm going to make a motion to hire, to appoint Mike Simon as Director of Maintenance at a starting salary. Someone could remind me of what that was.
Okay, 58.
$58,000, which is a $11,000 reduction from the previous person's starting salary. We'd like it noted that we negotiated a very good deal on that. So that's my motion, and I'm asking for a second.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, Clerk Gielamis, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Marasky?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
Congratulations, Mike. Now, could you go pick the mattress up at DNC?
They're all coming with me to do it.
That's right. Some backup.
Right, you promised them a road trip on this.
That's true too.
Okay, the next is this board thought so highly of Mike that you gave him permission to interview and decide on the replacement of the hall monitor, because it was somewhat of an urgent thing given safety concerns and whatnot. And so Mike Simon hosted this, and he interviewed.
I said it on it too, yeah.
Right, Dana and Mike interviewed a person that that they are recommending, and I'll let one of the 2 tell you. 2 minutes. Come on up. In your first official duty as Director of Maintenance.
Thank you all to the board for approving the position of maintenance foreman. I'm recommending Bronson to go ahead and get the job for building monitor. He came in here maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, was suggested by another employee. He lives a couple blocks away on D Road. He has a true passion, it looks like, to go ahead and serve the community, which I know he's just working here, but I believe in him. I mean, I really don't have much to say besides I trust him and everything, so.
Is he currently employed elsewhere?
He is. I believe he has, he gets out at 3 o'clock, so it would work out perfectly to go ahead and come in here and start at 5 o'clock. So that's my recommendation.
He's at local motor parts, right?
Yes.
And am I correct, he was the only person who applied? Or?
We did have one more,
Okay.
who also lives a few blocks away, but I suggested go with Ronson.
Okay.
That is my suggestion.
And, all right. And the salary of this person is $10 an hour,
Yes.
part-time for, what is it, 5 hours a week?
You're looking at probably about 4 hours per shift, about 4 to 6 times a month.
All right, so I'm gonna ask for a motion to hire, I'm sorry, what's the gentleman's name?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we hire Kempson, SYOUKHANES, of Des Plaines, Illinois, as our new home under premise on suggestion of Mike Oakland.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Marasky?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
After grilling Michael up here, I'll vote yes.
Trustee McCaskey?
Yes.
And
Yes, you
trustee
may sit down. That's fine.
Thank you, appreciate it, thank you all.
Bless you, and bless us. All right, so, the last board meeting, we had tabled, the discussion and vote on hiring a part-time payroll finance personnel assistant to assist Denise Jadco, so having been tabled, it needed to go on this board meeting. And that would be $15 an hour, and that was for a maximum, I believe, where is it, Denise?
Yeah, it was
20 hours?
20 hours.
20 hours a week, and there would be no benefits. So, No.
19, including 19.
I'm sorry, 19 hours, so IMR is not included. Nor is, why am I, yeah, thank you. Medical.
No benefits.
No benefits at all, other than the pleasure and privilege of working. So I'll make the motion to, actually, we need to post. We didn't post this yet. So this is literally a motion to post it. To be given permission by the board to pursue hiring this person at the stated salary, hours, and description that Denise brought forth at the last board meeting. Which I think could only be helpful in terms of all this, budget and insurance things. And again, I'd like the board to keep in mind, this is literally just posting. You're not tied to hiring. Can I have a second on that motion? Did I make the motion?
No.
Oh, I'm gonna make a motion to, post.
You made the motion.
I thought I made the motion.
Oh, okay, second?
All right, having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? All right. I'm sorry, Trustee Sweeney.
So, this is painful because I understand that Denise is looking for some assistance. I'm open to consideration, but I really prepared something saying that I want a motion to table the additional hire for this bookkeeper until we receive a flat budget equal to last year's expenditures. As Supervisor Maraska talked about bringing forth a reduction throughout the budget, but since we realized significant savings in workforce reductions this year, there should be significant savings that will allow us to make that hire. The current draft budget that was presented reflects, as I already said, over $1 million increase, and that's unacceptable. So we now, and I have written this for distribution to you all to be included in the meeting minutes. We do have a meeting scheduled to discuss the budget. At the time I wrote this, we didn't have a meeting scheduled, and that being the case, and the budget being germane to the discussion of salary hires and raises, it necessitates that we bring forth the facts in order to make the prudent decisions on hiring, and that's part of our fiduciary responsibility. So, since I cannot make the motion to ask for a presentation of a flat budget, I'm still left to struggle with something that is going to cost us an increase of another $13,000, $14,000 a year. While it doesn't sound like much, I don't know how that impacts where you're going to make cuts everywhere else, because the cuts that have to come are close to $1 million. So,
Be recognized.
Clerk Jones.
The only thing I would point out, Trustee Sweeney, as the supervisor mentioned, all this is doing is giving us permission to start the process of looking for somebody. It's in no way, shape, or form a hire, so I think by the time the person would come on board, we should have those numbers in place.
Absolutely.
Or a much better idea as to where we find the numbers can fall. So
Yeah.
this just
I mean,
gives
it's a
her
minimum
authorization to
of
get
2
the
weeks
process rolling.
posting, and, try for at least till the next board meeting, so.
as long as it's, it's hard to post something without intent, but if we made it clear that this is predicated.
We will
on-
make it very
A
clear.
budget.
We actually always make it clear, just so you know, to any prospective interviewee, that it's all dependent on board hire. That, that we don't have the power to hire them.
On a budget that would be acceptable to present, so we would have to then factor in the additional 14,000 or so for the year. So that would, I could see how that would, be something easy enough to do, because we've shown savings in mainstreamers as well as in the maintenance to offset that 13,000. So based on that and the fact that it's just posting, I'd be willing to do it. But that being said, if it wasn't an acceptable budget, if it wasn't shown to be able to work in the budget, then that's really up for you all. And I don't think, at least I don't want to be in the decision to micromanage what, and pick and choose what's most important.
Okay,
So-
I understand. All right, having a motion and a second, can you call the roll?
Supervisor Marasci?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carapota?
A clarification as it was, and I thank you, Peter, too, and Laura, that is for posting only. I would vote yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the final, at least hiring personnel matter, is discussion and vote on filling the code enforcement officer vacancy. So, because Mike Simon moved up to director of maintenance, we had an opening in code enforcement, which Supervisor Board approval we posted, and the starting salary is $20,000 less than what the current code enforcement officer had been making. We did get a fantastic applicant who was interviewed by Dana. And Mike and Dana, would you like to say a few words about this person? Or do you want Mike to?
We both can. We both interview.
Okay.
So his name is Nadar Ghazala, and Mike and I both interviewed him. We felt that he was definitely a good candidate for the position. This gentleman resides in Parkridge. He has been there for over 25 years, so he's very familiar with the community, familiar with Maine Township. We usually look for somebody who has good communication skills, is a people person, has calm demeanor. And as you know, the code enforcement officer deals with the public, deals with people, a lot of people who are unhappy. So that is the main thing that we look for. Mike and I met with him for at least an hour, and we felt he was really a good candidate. This gentleman, he's retired, he's looking to get back into the workforce, looking for a change. He is looking for full-time. He would not need benefits. He is on his wife's insurance.
Who does not need benefits?
Does not need
Oh,
benefits.
well, this is a huge plus.
He is
The last
on
code
his-
enforcement officer did have benefits.
Correct. So he's on his wife's insurance. She works at a hospital, and so it would be full-time, but no benefit. What am I missing?
I think Dana pretty much just, touched on it, just reiterating, honestly, I think one of the biggest things that I liked about him was his demeanor, the calmness that he presented, but also the confidence that he put out there as well. You need to know when you kind of need to turn it on a little bit, but not too much where you're not kind of adding on to the problem. You want everything to kind of, you need to keep it calm. And I think you could do that, and one of the biggest benefits is I'm still here. So it's a pretty smooth and easy transition, I believe, with me going back to maintenance after doing that for a long time, and then just also training a new person to do the job that I just did for 3 years. I think everything as a whole is just a very smooth transition with this gentleman.
And you know best what the residents need and expect, so.
I try to.
Sharon can testify to that.
Yes. Is he in a trainer to pick up Sharon's yard?
That's like the first place, that will be the first place that I will go to, and yes.
All right.
But yeah, it's like I said, it's a good smooth transition, I think.
Can you reiterate, Laura, for us what the what the amount is? I know it's 20,000 less.
I think it was $36,000.
Well,
I'm sorry?
it would be 38, because he's not taking any benefits.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
They had asked for
We were asking
38
for 38
because of no
health
benefits,
insurance.
which the benefits would be far more than the $2,000
Oh, for sure.
stipend.
Yeah.
Generally, you know, I will say the highway department was giving a stipend to people for not taking insurance, which sometimes works out really well. I don't know if they're doing that anymore. I don't think so. But it's not really a stipend. It's more that if you did the health insurance, it would work out to far more than $2,000. So, just in
I'm not sure about this. I mean, I know that our attorney here tonight does have personnel matters, right? I don't know if we can do that.
As far as what?
As far as-
Say, since you're not taking benefits, you're gonna get more.
I agree, we can't condition anything on that.
Right,
We're
just
just saying that
offering
we're
it,
giving
yeah.
them an increase. I don't think that's
Right.
conditioning anything on them waiving their insurance. That would be something I would recommend against.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we're not conditioning
I
it.
know, but I feel like it's tied to it. I'm not comfortable with that. I think if it's a $36,000 position, it's a $36,000 position. That's,
Did we say the last meeting was 36? That might be my fault, I thought it was 38.
Yeah, that's
That might be my fault, I think we offered the gentleman 38, but if we said 36 in the last board meeting, that's my error.
No, we'll see if he wants the job.
Yeah, I'm not sure, yeah, so we might.
So we may be with that, you know, we have to,
Sorry about that.
no, I had no intention to condition it. It was just a added benefit that, and yes, of course, if his wife stopped working at the hospital and he came on the insurance, you know, I want that very clear. And if you're uncomfortable with that, we'll offer him a 36 and see if he. Trustee McKinney.
was there a posting with?
Yes.
Was it posted at 36?
We don't.
And we don't.
We don't
put
post the salary, yeah.
So that's exact.
Offered at 38 right now?
I'm gonna be honest with you, Mike, and I thought it was 38. If you mentioned the last one, it was 36. Again, my
Or
error.
was it
I
a
think
packet for at 36?
let me just say this. So Mike's salary was, of course, quite a bit higher, and we just deducted our at 38. If the board would be willing to give you 38, that would be greatly appreciated. If you're not, we would have to revisit this.
Right, because you were saying
I
it was
heard
58 and you were at 20,000.
Right, it was
Correct.
58
And I think
and we were
that's why I had
going
my
at 20,000.
Right.
I think the position is well worth 38, I'm going to be honest with you.
There's also, let me point out, he's taking on an additional duty that is required of him pursuant to our last discussion. Once we do hire an attorney, we are going to be having a regular court date at Skokie to recoup the revenue that, you know, we're not getting.
Of course, the actual tickets are.
Yeah, that we're not getting. And so that revenue alone would hopefully more than offset, and he would be the witness to go. Trustee
So the
Sweet.
concern for me is like if he was offered 38,000 right now, right? If that was said to him,
Well, it was conditioned on board approval, so, you know, I
if
mean,
he was offered 38.
Trustee McKenzie.
But, I mean, did you talk about this health insurance? No?
Oh, no, not at all. No, absolutely not. In fact, we offered him 38 at the very end of the meeting. He said, oh, and I need to tell you, I don't need insurance. So I'm like, it was just a bonus at the end. And we're just letting you know as the board.
Right.
Because we know you're,
Oh, okay.
I need to make him
No, I think it
understand.
came out wrong,
Yeah.
how we just worded it. So no, that was at the very end. He said, oh, and by the way, so Mike and I were like, oh, that's an added bonus, so.
Trustee
Also,
Sweet.
the other, just point of clarification I wanted to make. So I know that when we put Mike in this new position, he was given a raise from what he previously was making to be in the new position. So when you were code enforcement officer, I thought were you making 58,000?
No.
You were making 48, right?
I was at 48.
Right.
So it's still a
really
$10,000.
I just want to make clarification, it's down to $20,000 savings.
No,
Well,
it's
it is
20
10, 'cause,
from what he is making now, so.
Well, we also look
Because
at-
Mike, it now is the code enforcement, was making, you know, you're right, I'm sorry, it's a 10,000.
No, but you're forgetting to factor in the savings from Dave.
From Dave.
So that's.
Dave
That's a
was
different
68.
set of say, that's a different number to say, because that was
Right,
73.
I
Dave was
understand.
at, Dave was at almost 70.
70,
I
yeah.
remember that.
Right, that's
I
right.
realized that was,
Right.
yeah, that's a
Right.
set.
Well, that's-
Right,
Exactly.
That's $22,000.
I thought the board would be really happy.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to make it misunderstood. It was definitely not conditioned. It was more.
I misunderstood, Dana.
So, with all of that discussion, do we feel comfortable taking a vote?
I do.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
I'm not taking a motion.
Oh, I need a motion.
I'm starting that right now.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to fill the code enforcement officer vacancy at the salary of $38,000 per year.
30, what did you say? Okay, I said
$38,000.
30. I can't say 30.
$38,000 per year.
I second the motion amended to the motion to reflect the name of Nader, N-A-D-E-R, middle initial A, last name of G-H-A-Z-A-L-E-H of Partridge.
All right, having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Marasky?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Yes, and I would just like to ask, was the amount stated in the motion? I just.
Yes.
Guys, I think I said it 3 times.
Yeah, because I didn't hear it either. Okay.
This was with the understanding that it isn't part of the motion 30.
So, under old business, we now have presentation, discussion, and possible vote on proceeding with an RFP for the upgrade of safety measures focused on making Maine Township a hard target.
I would suggest that.
Yes, Trustee Carabota, would you like to be
If I may
recommended?
suggest that we can table this to next meeting when we have a budget finalized.
So you would like to take, I think that's great, table it to the May meeting or the June meeting?
I left earlier, this will be the main meeting.
The May meeting, okay.
It is very important.
Okay, so would you like to make that motion?
Yeah, I'd make a motion that presentation, discussion, possible vote on RFPs for upgrade of safety measures focused on making Maine Township a hard target be tabled until the May meeting.
I'll second that motion. Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Marasky?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
Okay. And at Trustee Sweeney's request, she requested to have a motion to vote on procedures and policies that was submitted by the advisory committee of Trustee Carabota, McKenzie, and Sweeney. And I'm going to make a motion to table that vote on the policies and procedures to obtain attorney review and input. That was part of the packet received by the 3 trustees, and I think that's a very wise thing. So, you know, if the
Vote on
rest,
the first motion, which is on the agenda, to vote on the actual procedures and
right,
policies.
so I'm sort of doing what you did, you know, because that motion hasn't been made, so I was motioning to
But it
table,
is,
but sure.
it's on the agenda, so I'd like to vote on that.
We're not voting on it, that's the point.
I'm requesting that a vote, we have a vote. It's on the agenda as being a motion to vote on procedures and policies that's.
Right, but you have to actually make it,
Okay.
but I just made a motion to table.
This is an agenda item, so you have to give me, I want to make the motion
Then
to
what are we voting on?
Right,
vote on what I've provided in the board policies to be accepted by the board.
okay, Trustee Jones.
And the
How
second-
we can't accept it until it's until it's
That's how I said it.
reviewed by the attorney.
That's it.
No.
So,
Is there a compliance issue you're concerned about?
well,
You put it in there, it's
Yeah.
part of your
I
advisory.
think it's wise to have an attorney look at it
There's
before we
nothing in
accept
that
it.
board packet
Excuse
policy.
me, I'm speaking. You have continuously interrupted people all evening, and it's somebody else's turn. Now, I'm saying something, excuse me, but how can we vote on something that has not had the input of an attorney?
Have you read it?
Yes, I have read it.
What
And
do you
I
think
am not
needs to be done?
comfortable I'm not comfortable voting on something that has not had the input of the attorney, especially since right on it says to have the input of an attorney.
Can I call the vote, please?
No, you can't call a vote.
I made a
because
motion,
you're not
it
the
was
supervisor.
seconded. I made a motion and it was seconded.
Okay,
Not the supervisor.
But you don't have the authority to call a vote.
May I,
Do I have the authority to call vote? I'd ask the supervisor to call vote.
all right. No, I'd like to hear,
Somebody can make basically call the question if you'd like to. So if there's been a motion and a second, you want the vote to be taken, then you move to call the question.
Okay, call the question. I call the question for a vote, please.
And then there has to be a vote taken on the motion to call the question first. And then if that is approved, then the vote is taken.
Okay. I make a motion to call the question.
I'm assuming that also needs a second.
Somebody-
second, I second.
okay. Having a motion and a second to call the question, is there any discussion?
That's actually not debatable.
Oh, sorry, okay. Clerk Jelinek, can you take the roll?
Supervisor Marasco?
No.
Trustee Jones?
No.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
All right,
So
so,
the motion I would like to call is to accept the board policies as presented in
Second.
the last meeting.
having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? I'm going to start that discussion. In that advisory committee, it recommended that I have pending attorney review and input. I think that, making these broad sweeping policies without attorney input and review. And I don't have a problem with lots of them. It is nothing personal. I think there's nothing harmful in having, if you guys, I'm trying to compromise. What I would propose is, if you allow the interim, note that we can use and bring for certain things right now. So, you allow them to look at it, make any suggestions, I really thought you meant it. It's sort of like you want to take a vote contrary to your own advice. That's what is a little bit shocking, because I thought it was very good of you. I thought it was admirable that the committee put in there, subject to attorney input and review. Especially given that 2 out of 3 of you are attorneys and know the importance of doing that. I can add that on to the May 15th, since we'll have a lawyer by May 8th. And I don't know what prejudice is had by a 2-week delay in that. Thoughts?
May I speak?
Yes, Clerk Jelinek.
The only thing I would like to say is, you guys have 3 of the votes, so you're gonna put it through one way or the other. What in the world is the harm in having an attorney review and possibly give us some good suggestions on it that may make the language either stronger or more appropriate to what would make sense for the township. I think it's ridiculous to try and push it through without an attorney review.
Okay, I just want to comment on a couple of things. These board policies are pretty simple board policies that everybody has when it comes to advising, to adhering to Robert's rules and establishing agenda items and interacting with IMRF and making sure we get correspondence. I'm not going to go through everything and allowing for the trustees to also add agenda items. I'm not finished, please. I don't feel that there are compliance issues, and I also don't think this would be cast in stone where there couldn't be revisions if an attorney wanted to see it. But to have an attorney review this, I don't see the merit of spending that kind of money when, asking for board packets to be included in meetings and retention of videos and things like that. I just think that these are things, and I'd like to call a vote because I think that these are important considerations that we should adhere to, and it's not to say that we couldn't consider revisions down the road if we felt we want to make an amendment. So I don't know why we wouldn't, anybody could have responded in this last month with any kind of change, and I still think we could.
Trustee Sweeney, I took you guys at your words, and you wanted subject to attorney review and input. Unfortunately, it was submitted the day our attorney resigned. And obviously, if we want to go item by item, the agenda items, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think anybody has a problem with that. I want to make sure of the legalities and also some of the practicalities of, I think there was a policy to have 15 years of data on the website. And we're trying to clean up the website and make it, you say everybody has these. There's no township I've seen that has 15 years of data on their website. So I need to, check with Rich. Have you talked to Rich? Has this committee discussed with Rich?
I presented this to the last board meeting, so.
No, that's my question
10 years, not
is,
15 years. For
no, you're an advisory committee, you're to give advice. And not dictate, not demand. And I'm just asking a simple question. It isn't derogatory. Did you, ask Rich, and I think it might be valuable to ask, if that is, 10 years. All board meeting videotape shall be retained for no less than 10 years. So hang on. Right there, that flies in the face of the Local Government Retention Act, which is 7 years. So I'd like to see the effect of that. If the Local Government Retention Act is something that we can change. I don't want to do anything illegal. I'm sure you guys don't either.
No, what I had, Nancy?
No, I'm not done. Again, most of these things are already done, except not for 10 years, because I came into power a year ago. So I've really been doing the best I can. And some of these are in conflict with other apps, or potential in conflict with other apps. And I'm not, my personal opinion, and obvious, I'm one person, I'm not seeing the urgency we have at your, at my institution. We have videotaped board meetings. We have indexed them. We have about to go live stream. At your request, we figured out a way to do it for free. We really have been trying to work all together, and really, I'd like to move towards unity. That is my goal. And I think that, I don't think it's too much to ask for a little bit of give and take. I had every anticipation when I held the special board meeting and everybody voted for it, that we would have an attorney. And I just think it's good practice, and I can't believe 2 attorneys on the board would not think it's good practice. Hang on. Many of these things either are already done, and that's great. And many of these things we don't have an objection to. There's no objections. You're totally right on the agendas, and we're doing it. There's not been since September one agenda item that has been requested that has not.
I disagree.
Okay, well, listen, I mean, I really don't want to have acrimony. We're trying to work together. So if we can figure out, some kind of plan, and if it involves, I suppose we could put it on May 8th, but I hate to inundate, asking the attorney interviews. Okay, Trustee Jones had her hand up.
Okay. I have read it, and I echo what Supervisor Moraz is saying. It's not necessarily the content. However, as you said, you're willing to have revisions and that it's a fluid document, is my understanding of what you said. So if that's the case, you're willing to address revisions later down the road, why not just do it the right way and have input from an attorney from the beginning before we make a final vote? It's not a criticism of you or the work that the committee's done. It's an extra layer of
protection.
Thank you, and protection is the word, but yeah, it's an extra layer of input, right? That is valuable input. So why not? I mean, what's the difference if you pay an attorney now to do it? We have an attorney working on our policies for the personnel policies. Why not use it, coordinate the effort so that they at least maybe complement one another. It's not a criticism of you or the committee's work, but it just seems like it would be a wise thing to do to have an attorney look at it, especially since you recommended it in the first place. So I personally don't think we're ready to vote on it.
Okay.
We're not ready to vote on this.
My first comment is I don't recall requesting an attorney review for this to be removed, so that's my first comment.
We already
Second,
voted on
I
it all.
pardon me?
I said I thought we voted.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's the discussion.
I am willing to consider your comments. However, I don't think it's an issue of an attorney. What I think is critically important is feedback from you all if you're not in alignment with.
And okay, that's great. And you and
Because it's
I.
not really an attorney. And let me finish, please. So I had looked at various websites, including Downers Grove and Hanover Park, and they have links that just make it very concise to be able to go back, and they do have spots for 10 years worth of data. So it exists elsewhere. If it doesn't, violate the Records Review Act or something, then, I guess in that case, I can't imagine that it would, but if it did, an attorney would take that off. I'm willing to table this, but I think the most important thing is I got no feedback, so for the committee to go forward.
And I apologize,
And if
I
there is-
actually wrote feedback, but the reason I held off was because I thought we were voting on an attorney. And so I was gonna have that attorney review and make
But I-
sure that there was no conflict between the Local Government Destruction Act and, so if you're willing to compromise.
Yeah, and I gave, I think the group gave considerable thought to all the things that we.
I know, and I
want to
appreciate
include.
the work the
There-
committee
There's
did.
a lot of things right now that aren't, included in the
and-
website, and so,
But there-
the sooner we can do this, the better.
Right.
Because, if I can finish, one of the key points we found, and we've talked about just about every meeting, is the number of FOIAs. So in my mind, the more transparent we are with the data on the site, the less work it's going to be for FOIAs and the less attorney requests. So having an attorney review this is okay, but, I think it's most important that we review it first. If there's a concern, then we bring that forth to an attorney. That's the way I would prefer to see it happen for a future meeting, so that if there's a compliance issue, then that specifically could be brought forward.
Okay,
But
so
I don't see the benefit of the whole thing.
I was
If I'm wrong,
trying to
that's
follow
fine.
your guys, and I thought you wanted attorney input before you wanted our, so I'm happy, but I was so inundated with all these other things, and frankly, I'm interviewing 6 law firms, and
Understand.
Doreen's been working on some revisions, but the big issue was, I don't want to I'm not going to pay the attorney. And it really was, that was one of my main sticking points. And,
We have 2 attorneys that have been part of this committee, so
But-
I guess I just feel that if we think we need that, then I guess we have to have a discussion. But the first thing that should happen at the next meeting that we discuss this is anything should be brought forward in
Okay.
advance, and then we can vote on it. And if we say the vote's predicated on having an attorney review, maybe we should all have feedback in advance of that to the attorney. if we really
so
need
I
it.
think we're on the same page.
Right.
That
So I
we
will
could-
withdraw my motion.
Okay.
But I will ask that I get feedback on,
What you want?
But my resistance to feedback was also waiting for an attorney approval.
We misunderstood.
And for attorney's input.
Right, we thought.
So, I don't, I read it, I reviewed it, I'm not criticizing it, but I was waiting for an attorney's input. That was my understanding. So I don't intend to give you my opinion until I hear one from a legal mind.
Trustee Carabo.
I think the points are all very well taken. I think what we got to keep in mind though too is there was a sense of urgency, and that's why the committee was created. Because as we go through seminars and learning on how to be a trustee and learning about township government, and then looking at our policies, we had none. And that was a problem. It's a real problem. So we looked at this as being a problem that had urgency. And that's why the committee was created. That's why the committee spent so much time, and we put these policies together. They're the basic. They're not thorough at all. They're the basic. They're the groundwork of any policy, in my opinion. But I also see the point that if there's concern about having an attorney review, I do see that as a point. But I think what my concern is, I just don't want any undue delay. So it would be a really good idea if the other board members would not wait on the lawyer, if they would simply go through it, see what their points are, and then we also have the lawyer input as well, and then we just get this done. Because,
I just do want to say that we did have quite a few policies that Trustee Sweeney had requested, the packet of policies, resolutions, and ordinances, and Doreen sent that to.
but I saw no board policies.
There's no board
as far as
policies.
Board operations.
Well, all of them are related to board operations.
Now, you have-
And for example, when I requested multitude of times for resolutions to be put on the website that we.
So, but I think we're all in agreement,
Right.
so.
But that's what you're decision, that's no board policy.
Okay.
And so when I had said this, I said I'm compiling a full list of issues to be addressed by the adoption of formal policies. And then I've outlined a list of our most pressing concerns as well as remedial draft policies, which may serve as a working document. So I think that's what this is, and I wanted to adopt a working document. But I will, I guess,
I appreciate
table
that.
that, if that's what
And
everybody.
your suggestions, table
Wants.
them to the May date?
Yes.
And then,
And then we vote.
Yeah.
And by then, we'll have input from everybody. And if you guys want to meet again and have any revisions, because you said it was a really rough.
No,
draft.
they're really, I'm not saying rough draft, I'm saying they're really basic board proposals, in my opinion. They weren't any, Einstein kind of created documents. But I do see the point of wanting to have a lawyer take a look at it, so.
So, along those lines, may I have permission for a lawyer to spend 2 hours looking at it? With respect to the
I don't
local
think
instruction.
it takes 2 hours to read this.
No, I'm talking about the research with respect to, I know that we can make policies that are less restrictive.
No, we can make policies that take what the law is and we can make it tougher. We can make it more
I'm
strict.
sorry, more restrictive.
All right,
That's what I
so 10 years is more strict than 7 years, so I think we're good, but I
I
do see your
think
point.
we are.
I do see your point.
But I just really want to make sure, because, we are in the midst of, the June shredding event is coming up, and we're going to be destroying, because 7 years, we're out of room, and, we do everything proper.
Well, right, this is why it's online.
Correct. And, the website got delayed because of all the other matters. And I think that's going to address a lot of your issues, like, I think, a lot of them. So I think we're all in agreement that and I appreciate your guys' confidence, you do. So you're going to withdraw your motion.
So I'd say for an attorney to review it, it should take less than an hour.
So can I have an hour? I mean,
Yes.
they bill and, what can I say?
So it'd be a motion, to correct my understanding that it's going to be a motion to table this to the May
Correct.
date.
Correct, for vote.
For vote.
Yeah. With the understanding of attorney review and
Everybody-
board members and
Input.
to, obviously in board packets, and probably well before, although I am interviewing, there's only so many hours in the day, everybody will get to you, we'll get to the board, it's not, because you guys, you did your job. You were the advisory committee, and I appreciate that. So you withdrew the tabling motion, right? Or the calling the question motion? Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to table this to the regular May board meeting and allow an attorney to review it for 1 hour from Ansel.
Yeah, and with all board members to give their input.
And I'm sorry, and for all board
Make a lot of
members to
sense.
give their input should they desire to do so and have that put in the board pack.
I would second.
Thank you. Having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? All right, hearing none, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Marasek?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
All right. The next motion, and this is, because I had promised it, that, what we have done in years past, which does not mean, of course, at all, I'm certainly not that person that says what's done in years past, is done. But I had made a promise to this board that I I would get you my salary request by this meeting, the April meeting, so that it could be considered and voted on prior to, you know, the final. Did I skip something? Oh, I'm sorry. So I did skip something. All right. We also had appointment of the township attorney. That was tabled from the April 17th special board meeting. Individually, I talked to our board members and to give their process due consideration and due weight and really take the time to do it properly. And also because Trustee Caraboda said he had more coming, I thought it was in the best interest of this township to have a special meeting. I mean, we sort of touched on this for the May 8th. So formally, I'd like to make a motion to table the appointment of the township attorney until the May 8th special board. Can I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, can you call the roll?
He's not there.
Oh. What do I do?
Supervisor Marasco?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Caraboda?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweeney?
Yes, and I'd like to say, just add to it that I appreciate your consideration, as I know you made the appointment, Laura, and I do appreciate your consideration to look at other attorneys and have this be one of our.
Thank you. And if you have any more, you know, since May 8th is around the corner, really would appreciate by Friday.
Yeah, you don't sleep much anyway.
No, I know. But it's like these poor firms, you know, they're coming for weeks and here and there, and I've had, you know, like you said, you know, no, I really want to make the process, I want to make you guys as happy as I can and comfortable, you know, with whoever the township attorney is. So under new business, I had promised that I would get this to you for the April meeting, so that it can be factored in to the budget, you know, discussions at the budget hearing and you know, when we did do those cost reductions and consolidations. And just to refresh the audience, I had instituted for the first time in the history of the township performance-based evaluations. I think that went very well. And we kept them fairly limited. I think there were 14. And then the alternate, or in addition, is the cost of living rates, which you know, Trustee Sweeney had asked me and Dana to check with every other township. 99% of them we sent you all that. We're doing a base of a cost of living, again, more than ours. You know, they were doing a base of like 3%. I tied it to the consumer price index with respect to the cost of living for the staff at 2%, since the department heads, by very nature of being department heads, made them 1.5%. We gave tables of the comparisons between what actual spending was last year, what which was approximately $1.9 million, and the fact that I gave you tables with merit, with no change, with merit increase only, with COLA only, and with both. And you know, rounding this out with both, it's still under what we spent last year because we did have those staff consolidations and changes that, so, you know, I promised I'd get it to you. My fault. That's okay. I promised I'd get it to you, and so I am going to make that motion to approve the staff performance-based increases as presented and/or the cost of living increases tied to the CPI of 2% for regular staff and 1.5% for department heads. And can I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, I will open this to discussion. Trustee Carabota.
I understand on what was, I understand what was talked about before, that this really was not the time, this is a time, in my opinion, that we have to get the budget down. We have to get the actual numbers and the actual budget down first. And that'll leave, we anticipate, I think realistically, that would leave monies left over to be utilized toward salary increases, et cetera, for me to just go ahead and approve it, these increases without having actual numbers, as I talked about before, I really think is not proper, appropriate. So I would ask that you table this until we get the budget.
So would you want to table it to the May meeting or the regular May meeting or the May 15th meeting?
I would say the regular meeting.
The regular meeting? Okay. All right, and
Okay, and still need, okay, I just want to say something, okay, when I can't change the budget, that, once I bring in the budget on the May 22nd meeting, I can't make any changes. I mean, I can't go, you know what I'm saying? What we have that meeting is what we have.
right, that's why we do this.
So are you sure you don't want to do it on the May 15th?
What she's saying is that,
That night.
Right,
what-
once you
what we have,
vote
what
on
we
it.
have. There's no further changes that night, do you know what I'm saying? So, there's no further discussion, there's no changes, there's no nothing. So when we go into the meeting on the 22nd, what you have in front of you is that I can't go up to my office and start recalculating, you know what I mean?
right.
So, I think maybe we
Is
should,
there any way we could do the May 15th?
yeah, I think we should do that before.
Yeah,
I mean, we'll have the numbers, so, you know, we're gonna make every effort to do what you want with
keeps
the
us on the
flat.
straight and narrow all the
Right.
And you said you didn't wanna micromanage,
Right.
and she promised to make every effort to try to.
I'll try to get something for you, at least,
You know, but
you know, yeah.
I don't wanna get to May 22nd and then, you know, thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, this, time for changes then.
So, is that okay? Yeah, would you amend your motion?
Yes, I'll amend my motion that we table the issue until the May 15th date.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah. Who said that?
Claire.
Oh. Okay, having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none.
Yes. I would just like to make a comment that I know that there was a petition submitted. It's not a valid petition because we did it, in order to accept a petition, we at Maine Township would have to hear from, I guess, at least 15 residents, right, Laura? What had been presented was some factual information about what people in Maine Township have experienced since a period of time, since 2009 to 2016, where the residents have not kept pace with the cost of living. So we continually have done so. In fact, we've had, I think, 26% increases since that time in salaries. So I know, you know, positions have been shuffled a little bit, but, you know, I guess the question, and again, true, I don't want to micromanage this, if we have some leeway to provide some increase. We also talked about merit. So, you know, there's a couple of things on the table. That we think, or at least from my perspective, I look at this, that, you know, it's important to consider that the people that are paying for Maine Township and the taxpayers have only seen a 7%, which is not even keeping cost of living. It would have been over 12% increase, and we haven't kept pace with that. And yet, we're more than keeping pace with a 26% increase, what we've been getting Maine Township employees. So, you know, that's a concern, because it falls on the residents, it's the taxpayer to pay for salaries. So, you know, I'll be anxious to see what we can come up with the numbers and see where that falls. And then I think at that point, we have to have a discussion between, you know, people that have been identified as being exceptional employees there versus cost of living, and, you know, does the responsibility really fall on us to ensure that we protect against inflation every year when that isn't happening in the private sector or anywhere else. So I'm just making a comment.
So then we can,
Okay. Alright, so,
Call the roll.
call the roll.
Supervisor Marasco?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
And Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
Alright, I'm gonna make a, request. I mean, I just wanna notify the board that we are gonna have a closed session item that came up, because, in keeping with the board's wish to be notified of all correspondence. But, so, my request is if we could move that in front of board reports. To do that, I don't think it's very long, and with respect to that closed session, and also, we would need the attorney here, and he's here, that's one of the reasons.
For the closed session?
Yeah, I'm going to, it would be a motion to go into closed session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120, Section 2, Paragraph C2, which in short, I'm sorry, C11, which in short legalese is pending litigation. And it really is that I want to give you this stuff, and this, so I'd like to move that in
There
front
has
of.
to be a vote to go into closed
Yeah.
session, so you'll have a vote to decide if you want to or not.
But are we required to discuss pending litigation?
As your attorneys, we would always recommend that you go into closed session with us to maintain your privilege, but there's no obligation.
It violates attorney, you're gonna be opening there will be no attorney-client privilege, so the person suing the township is in pending litigation we won't have attorney-client privilege. Do I have a second on the motion to go?
Second.
Having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, can you call the roll?
Supervisor Marasco?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
And Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
Excuse us, the time is 9:40. We will be back shortly. Thank you for your patience. So we need a motion to come out of closed session.
make a motion to come out of closed session.
Second?
Having a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing, whoa, sorry. Now that I punched, I really apologize. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can you call the roll?
Supervisor Marasco?
Yes.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Trustee Carabota?
Yes.
Trustee McKenzie?
Yes.
Trustee Sweet?
Yes.
Okay, where am I? All right, we are at officials report. I'm gonna start this trend, and for the first time ever, I'm going to have no report. Trustee Jeff.
I have no report.
Trustee Carbone.
Other than thanking everyone who stayed till 10:20 tonight, oh my gosh, I think we should consider a board policy, anybody who stays after 9:30 gets pizza. Thank you, that's no other report.
Trustee McKenzie.
No other report.
Trustee Sweeney.
I would simply like to submit my actual comments that I had mentioned before regarding the budget and expenditures. It's a 2-page document, and also my position on the additional hire and hire of employees as it pertains to the budget and the impact. So I will provide this to VASHA to be included in these meeting minutes, please.
All right, and, sorry, Clerk Teelon.
Nothing to add to my report.
All right, and the other two have left. Circulating the bills to be paid right now. Attorney's report, we do not have an attorney. We have an interim attorney who is not expected to make a report. Unless for some reason you guys want a report. Okay. Administrator's report. No report. All right. So, we did close session. I would ask for a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
And I have a second.
Second.
And
All in favor?
aye. All opposed? Thank you very much for everybody's participation.